On the 28th of August 2002, the wreck of a Japanese midget submarine was discovered, resting in 400 meters of water, 5 miles from the entrance of Pearl Harbor. The whereabouts of all 5 midget submarines from the 6th Fleet Special Attack Unit had finally been discovered. But the question needs to be asked, what happened to these submarines? During the early hours of the 7th of December 1941, the 5 mother submarines of the Special Attack Unit were positioned outside of Pearl Harbor, and they began launching their midgets, with I-16 launching HA-16 7 miles south-southwest of the harbor's entrance at 12:42 a.m. I-22 would launch HA-15 9 miles south-southwest of the harbor's entrance at 1:16 a.m. I-18 launched HA-17 13 miles south-southwest of the harbor's entrance at 2:15 a.m. I-20 launched HA-18 5.5 miles south-southwest from the harbor's entrance at 2:57 a.m. And finally, I-24 launched HA-19 10.5 miles west-southwest of the harbor's entrance at 3:33 a.m. At 4:08 a.m., the USS Condor reported the sighting of a potential submarine, and the USS Ward began searching for the suspected submarine, but located nothing. By 6:30 a.m., the Ward, along with the USS Antares, which was towing a target raft, were approaching the outer gate to Pearl Harbor's entrance. Just aft of the target raft, Ward's lookout spotted a small black object sticking out of the water, and this was the conning tower to one of the Japanese midget submarines. At 6:37, Ward goes on the attack, and at 6:45, it opened fire at 100 yards distance, with the first round missing the submarine. Then, as it closed the distance to roughly 50 yards, it fired a second shot, and a 4-inch shell struck the conning tower. Ward misses a ramming maneuver on the submarine, and it disappears beneath the surface, and 4 depth charges were dropped. At 6:51, Captain Outerbridge aboard Ward sends a signal to the 14th Naval District Headquarters. We have attacked, fired upon, and dropped depth charges upon submarine operating in the defensive sea area. A few minutes later, a PBY dropped more depth charges in the location of the submarine, and it was never seen again and presumed sunk. At 7 a.m., HA-19 approached Pearl Harbor's entrance, and by 7:55, the first wave of Japanese aircraft had arrived and began their attack runs, and so it was too dangerous for the submarine to enter the harbor, and Sakamaki had to wait. While navigating towards Pearl Harbor, it became apparent that the gyro compass was malfunctioning, and Ensign Sakamaki had to navigate the submarine largely by visuals through the periscope. At roughly 8 a.m., he ran the submarine aground on a reef. At 8:17, the USS Helm spotted HA-19 stranded on the reef and opened fire, but missed. Sakamaki adjusted the ballast within the submarine and ran the engines full speed astern, which eventually got the submarine off the reef. The submarine's lower torpedo tube and the figure-8 neck cutter had been damaged, and the lower torpedo could not be fired, and the submarine's lower vertical rudder had also been damaged. There were also minor leaks in the forward section of the submarine, which began hitting the batteries, and they began to emit chlorine gas, which knocked the 2 men unconscious. Once Sakamaki had regained consciousness, the submarine grounded again, and he once again shifted the ballast, which resulted in the submarine freeing itself, but it would no longer respond to the helm. It had lost maneuverability. While the submarine was hopelessly drifting, it was depth-charged a few times, and Sakamaki realized the situation was hopeless, and he decided to ground the submarine and scuttle it, but the submarine ran aground on its own. Sakamaki lit the fuses to the scuttling charges, and he ordered Inagaki to abandon the submarine. Once in the water, the 2 men had become separated, and Sakamaki was knocked unconscious, and he washed ashore. Inagaki had died in the sea, and his body had washed ashore as well. The scuttling charges also failed to detonate, and so the submarine would be captured by the United States intact. At 8:30 a.m., the USS Zane reported, sighted enemy submarine 200 yards astern of Medusa. The USS Breeze and USS Curtis also spotted the submarine, and Curtis opened fire. At 8:37, the USS Monaghan also spotted the submarine's periscope and conning tower roughly 1,200 yards off its starboard bow, and Captain Buford orders flank speed and prepares to ram the submarine. The USS Medusa and USS Tangier also open fire on the submarine. The submarine fires a torpedo at the Curtis, but is struck by a 5-inch shell in the conning tower, and is also hit by several 50 caliber machine gun shells. The torpedo missed the Curtis and struck a dock instead. The submarine then turned towards the Monaghan and fired its second torpedo, which missed the destroyer and landed against Ford Island. The Monaghan strikes the submarine, forcing it under the water, and then it drops 2 depth charges on the submarine to ensure the kill. After the depth charges had exploded, the submarine partially resurfaced, and then it resubmerged. It was never heard from again. At roughly the same time, another midget submarine had been depth charged outside of Pearl Harbor's entrance, and it too disappeared beneath the waves. At 10:04, the USS St. Louis was at the first entrance buoy to the South Channel when 2 torpedoes were fired at it from roughly 2,000 yards off the starboard bow. The 2 torpedoes missed the St. Louis as they ran into a reef before reaching it. This is one of the scenarios for the 5th and final submarine. What we know for certain about this submarine is that it remained afloat and it would recontact its mother at 22:41 as I-16 received the message Kira. Kira was a message that confused I-16 as it made no sense, so it was assumed that the midget submarine meant to send Torah. A very simple error when typing out this message could change it from Torah to Kira, and so it was a sound decision to assume that Torah was the intended message. At 12:51 a.m. on the 8th of December, I-16 received a second message from the midget submarine that stated, "Unable to navigate." No further contact was made with any of the midget submarines, and none of them arrived at the rendezvous point for collection, so the Japanese made the correct assumption that all 5 had been lost in action. With that, the operational histories of the first 5 midget submarines used by the Imperial Japanese Navy in World War II came to a conclusion. Even though the submarines would prove no further use to the Japanese Navy, their stories were far from complete, as they had many answers to give, but this could only come through their wrecks. However, the discovery and subsequent investigations into the wrecks is a story to be continued in Part 3. So, if you have learned something new in this video, why not leave a like and a comment down below, and have a wonderful day.